is Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss our memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I'm Brad.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Giff.
I'm Pete.
Yeah.
And that's good. Pete's excited because tonight's his pick. So we're
That's
going to
right.
have him lead the way pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully people enjoyed The Queen's Gambit last week. We're going to continue on with our TV shows of the pandemic tonight.
Another Netflix show.
Yeah. Well, actually,
is this not
it's Pop TV?
That's true.
Yes.
But it really took off
I
when
watched
got
it on Netflix.
Yes.
Okay. I
We
retract
did too.
my
We watched
statement.
the first 5 seasons on Netflix, but then we caught up before it finished. So we recorded it on YouTube TV and watched them like live.
Oh, that's
Wow.
brilliant.
That's cool.
So yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. We want to first, once again, as always, thank our classmates who have found it in their heart to follow us and support us on Buy Me a Coffee, and are always looking to add to our yearbook pages there. Isn't that right,
Yes.
guys?
That's correct.
Yeah,
I don't care if they
yes,
find it in
yes.
their heart so much as find it in their wallet to,
Jesus.
to help us out.
It's not, you know what? That's not what I thought you were going to say there.
Yes. Many thanks to the classmates that have gone on and supported the show. That means a lot to us.
And speaking of that, we do have coming up in, what'll it be, like in 2 weeks here, our very first one who joined us is going to be a guest. He is going to be on the show with us, and we look forward to that. So Brian, who was our very first classmate.
Another Brian.
We
That's
had a
right.
shortage of Brian, so we needed to add more.
So we're going to be kicking off 1999 in May, and he chose the movie Office Space, and so he's going to be on with us to talk about a movie that we all love and would have loved to talk about whether he picked it or not. So he fits right in. It's going to be great.
Yes, he did.
So
Yes,
we're
he's
gonna
And if you
go
would
ahead
like to
and-
join us like that, then you can do it too.
Yes, absolutely. Please come on and give us your ideas, and it's awesome.
You can even just, if you go and buy me a coffee, you can just even suggest things to us. You can just let us know what's out there. What are we missing? What do we need to get to?
We take requests.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, anything new, guys?
Not a ton. We had a huge day on Sunday, this latest Sunday for download. So I don't know if we got a new listener that happened to find us and started downloading episodes. If that happens to be you, please reach out to us on social media via Twitter or Facebook or on the Buy Me a Coffee site and just leave us a note.
Or Instagram or TikTok.
Yep.
I'm running 4 different accounts right now, so
MapQuest, Yahoo,
Yelp.
Mm-hmm.
Yelp. That would
No,
be
but-
good if he gave us a 5-star review on Yelp.
But we do have, just to clarify, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Those 4 are real. We have all 4 of those.
Okay.
We sure do. And,
yeah.
and we're
Enough
still
having fun.
waiting to hear from our fan in Germany as well.
Yes.
I would like to say Dankeschön for continuing to listen and download the episodes, and we'd love to hear from you.
We're making some progress this season here, but the thing we're still wanting more and more of is for the people who listen to actually let us know you're out there.
Yeah.
Besides just the fact that you are out there, but like go on one of those places and respond to a question or say something about us that's funny or make fun of us. We don't care, but
At the same time, though, we're not trying to sound desperate.
I am a little bit.
no,
Okay.
no, we need
All right.
interaction.
Okay, we'll take it.
Well, we are talking about the pandemic here when we were all stuck alone for the most part. So maybe that's why we're looking for more companionship.
When we were all just stuck online and with nobody to see. Now it's a little better. Now it's a lot better.
That's where.
All right. Well, last week we talked about the Queen's Gambit, and this week, Pete, we are going to get into your choice. So why don't you kick it off? Tell them what they are going to hear about this week.
The show that I picked is one that we did get into. It had been around for a total of 6 seasons, wrapping up in 2020, but we hadn't actually watched it in our household until the pandemic. So this is one positive thing that we can be thankful for the pandemic. It turns out that this is probably one of my top 5 favorite TV shows of all time. It is right up there with Seinfeld and Friends and some of those just great comedies. And I would actually say that in some ways it's much better written, much better done, because I can't think of a bad episode. Like even Seinfeld and Friends, there are some episodes where it's just like, and towards the end, those shows had kind of jumped the shark a little bit. But for me, Schitt's Creek
fighting
is
words on Seinfeld there.
well, I mean, there's some pretty lame episodes, I think.
There was a couple that I didn't love, but it's still
right. Yeah, I think every episode of Schitt's Creek, because it had a good storyline, it was funny, it was emotional, it just had every single thing that you could possibly look for in a show like this. And both my wife and I loved it. I cannot imagine, and I've actually talked to a couple of people that have said this. It's like, yeah, I've seen 1 or 2 episodes, and then I just couldn't quite into it. I cannot even Queen's Gambit. I could say, yeah, I could see how you just, it didn't turn on to you or whatever. But this one, I just cannot imagine watching a single episode and not just falling in love with it. I think
Can I jump in for 2 things?
Yes, you may. You've already done that, actually.
Well, just backing up to the comparison of the shows, I think how TV has changed is important to keep in mind, because how many episodes of this were there? Like 65
80.
or something?
I think there was 80 episodes.
And a show like Seinfeld had like 180. So, it was harder to maintain the momentum in the past with shows like that. But the other thing that you brought up, a lot of people I've heard say, like, they don't think the first season's very good, or they didn't get into the first season. And I don't get it either, Pete. I thought the first season was excellent. Maybe not as it grew and got better and better, but that was definitely something I heard a lot of people say, even people that love the show, that like that first season they just kind of didn't love, but they kept at it, and then they eventually did. So I don't know. Well, I disagree. I'm with you
with it, and I mean the characters just grow on you. For those of you that have not seen the show, the premise is that you have a very well-to-do Hollywood Beverly Hills family that gets busted for tax evasion, and this happens right away, like in the first 5 minutes of the first episode, where they lose everything except for a motel that they bought as a joke. The dad bought it for the son, basically as a joke, in some little hick town.
Well, he bought the whole town.
Called Schitt's Creek. Oh, okay, so yes, he bought the whole town, but they lived in the motel.
Yes,
right, and so so that's where they have to live, and for some reason, and this is kind of where it's a little bit, why would they even do this? The IRS that's the only thing that they allowed them to keep of all of their possessions and their property and everything like that. But anyway, you just get past that right away.
Because the IRS found no value in it. Because right away in the series,
got it.
Johnny tries to sell the town. That's what his plan is. He's going to sell the town, get some money, and get out of there. And the mayor, played by Chris Elliott, tells him that the town was for sale for 20 years before he bought it. So what are the chances of you being able to unload this thing? So
I never really understood that part. How do you buy a town?
Right, I don't know.
I just that's the one part about the plot here that I just could never quite understand.
Right.
Like, what, I mean, I don't know, but whatever.
I am about to connect Chris Elliott to REM and the Twin Cities in
one. Oh my God, Mr. Analogy coming on.
All right, here it comes.
So Chris Elliott, the first time I had ever seen him before, does anybody remember the original TV show that he was starring in way back in the 90s? Get a Life.
With the theme song, Stand by REM.
And it took place in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh, that part I don't remember.
In fact, his job, part of the premise of that show was that he was an adult paper boy that delivered the St. Paul Pioneer Press. And that was the premise of the show. And that was as the introduction of the show. That's him while they're playing Stand. He's throwing the Pioneer Press on his paper route.
I remember
So,
everything about
there
that
you go.
except for the fact that it was from or supposed to be in St. Paul, which seems weird. That seems like the thing I'd remember the most.
Well, there you go. So yeah, they wind up living in this podunk town. Now, is the town supposed to be in Canada? Is that right?
It's in Pennsylvania.
It's in Pennsylvania.
Is what I think
Where
that's what
I never saw that anywhere.
Basically,
It was
all of
filmed
the
in
actors.
Canada because they're from Canada. Like
Right.
the places are a
Right.
place just north of Toronto somewhere where like you can go see like Bob's, the actual
the
buildings
garage and the
stuff.
motel and right, yeah.
So
Right.
Eugene Levy, who is as good as it gets, and Catherine O'Hara are the main two characters, and then you have the kid who is Dan Levy, who is of course Eugene Levy's real son. But the whole family, but Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy, of course, they got their start together originally on SCTV, which was like the Toronto or Canadian version of Saturday Night Live, which wasn't nearly as big. It was kind of like the minor leagues, but the amount of stars and talent that came out of SCTV was just ridiculous. It had John Candy, Rick Moranis, Martin Short, and a whole
was Dave
long
Thomas
list
in
of
that as
people.
well, I think.
Yeah, I think like the Strange Brew guys and all that stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So just so much great talent. And so Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy have done a number of things before together, actually, in addition to SCTV. I didn't have them all written down, but not their
Well, they're most
Show
known
and
for
Waiting for
the
Guffman
Christopher
and-
Guest movies. Yeah, Best
Yeah.
in Show and Waiting for Guffman.
Yeah.
Yes. So then we get into the storyline, and as I said, you attach yourselves to the characters right away, even though they are sort of a family that you would not like because they are so snobbish and everything, and they really the comedy of it is that they don't fit in with the town very well, and they're standing out, and
it's a fish out of water type story, at its core.
Right. It is the reverse of the Beverly Hillbillies. This is
Correct.
how I put it. So, and then I said that to somebody once, and then they pointed out, well, it's Green Acres. So, which is basically that's the premise of Green Acres. But so it could be compared that way too. But then eventually, as the show develops and the characters develop, you see them start to form relationships and everything, even though they're always thinking that they're better than everybody else. And in some ways they are, and they're smarter, and they kind of know how the world works a little better. But at the same time, they develop this bond with the town and with the people. And it's just great. It really comes together at the end just beautifully how that happened. So what we've done for this episode is the one other thing that I do want to mention about the show that's kind of unique is that a large part of the plot line is about a gay couple where Dan Levy his character that's David, and he's gay, and he's getting married in the final episode, which we're going to discuss, to Patrick. But
he was actually described earlier as pansexual, was he not?
Yes,
pansexual, because he actually had a relationship with Stevie for a short time too.
He that's correct. But as he put it, he likes the wine and not the label. Yeah, is the famous quote from this show.
Yes, where he actually explains.
But he's fully committed to his male partner at the end of the show.
Yep.
But what's good about the show, and I saw some kind of documentaries or some short clips about the show with the cast, and the premise of the show is they're not being discriminated against. They're just being in a small town like that. You'd think that there would be discrimination and things like that, but it's like that's not even really a part of the storyline at all. Everybody just seems to accept them as a gay couple, which is great to see, and is part of the heartwarming nature of the show. In that it really wasn't.
There's no homophobia anywhere in the show. It's just when David has a relationship, his relationship is no different than Alexis having a relationship. If it doesn't work out, it's because career or likes or dislikes. It has nothing to do with sexual orientation whatsoever. It's just another relationship. But in the show,
his relationships build over time, just like they do with the town as well. So like the town knows him. It took 3 years before we met Patrick, And so the town knew him, knew everything about him. I mean, and it just kind of, he grew up in his way with the town. And so when he did meet Patrick and people just, it all just fit together just right. Like they just timed it out. And that's the way the characters built throughout the show too.
Right.
That's sort of a good segue into the episodes that we're going to be discussing. So I picked the final 2 episodes because, as I said, we are talking about 2020. The show concluded in 2020, and I thought that the last 2 episodes wrapped the show up perfectly. And I also think, we talked about Seinfeld and Friends. I think that this is one of the best finales of any of these shows that we all grew up loving. And so but we'll talk about that, and that has a big part to do, of course, with their relationship and them getting married, and that's what a big part of these last 2 episodes are about. So season
before
6,
we get into the episodes, Gifford, do you have stuff like when we watched it, how we got into it too then?
Oh yes.
Well,
or at least I would like to. If you,
I'm trying to remember if you're the one who told me I needed to watch it, because I didn't.
I'm always telling you what to do.
Right. Well, because I didn't watch this until the pandemic, and so I
didn't really either. So that was the thing. So I mean, I had known the show, I'd heard of it quite a bit, and Kim had actually watched it a little bit, like earlier years, like when it was on TV. She had watched some, but she didn't really like totally get into it. And she had watched most of the first season, but didn't love it, or just like didn't quite get into it. So I knew of it. She was watching it. But then we kept hearing more and more about it. And then I heard from this person at work who you would never expect to like a show like this. And he was just raving about it too. And it was around that time when it was like, okay, we're here. So I was going to start watching it. And she's like, okay, I'll watch season 1 over again and just start over. And like this right away, I mean, within 2 episodes, whatever, we just loved it and could not stop watching it. And so she doesn't remember why she didn't really totally hook onto it that first time, but the second time she did. So we loved it and we flew through it. We had nothing to do. We would watch like 6 episodes in a row at night because, you just had nothing else to do. And as we're watching it, my daughter, who at that time was like 11 years old, she had seen the show. And as we're getting close to it, she was like, that show kind of looks interesting. Like maybe I think it looks kind of funny. So then we started talking about it, and we're like, well, our kids should watch this show. And we have a son who is gay. And with that whole storyline, and they were like, well, this is just a perfect show for everybody.
Oh my God, this is your family. This is exactly your family.
As soon as we finished watching it, we started it literally like the next day over again with our kids, and we didn't get sick of it one bit. That second time through, it was just as good, if not better. Plus, it was fun to watch with them and see their reactions and see how, like, I think he loved it so much because he doesn't show a lot of interest in a lot of stuff. But with this one, he totally did. So it was just the perfect show to watch at that time. And because you could watch the whole thing, it wasn't like there was 180 episodes or 200 episodes. It was something you could sit down and watch over a relatively short time and not get sick of it and not feel overwhelmed. So it was amazing. And I had this show on my list of things to pick either for 2020 or 2015. So when Pete picked it, I was like, that's great. That's awesome.
Right. Well,
so it was a huge deal for a whole family. And so it was just, we loved it so much.
Well, and for me, I started watching it. And the other thing I liked about it was I think it was over when I started, so I could just binge it and just run through the whole thing. Like I don't remember if I don't think I had to wait for the last season to come out. But going back to your point about the first season, I could see where people would have a couple reservations, and here are my reasons. These characters from the get-go are larger than life and kind of very quirky. I mean, Moira's accent is unbelievable. David is so over the top. I mean, his persona is set to disgusted at all times, which is so funny to me. He's always upset. He's always put off. Everything is just not good enough. And that's one of the reasons why later in the series, when him and Patrick become a thing and he becomes more emotional, that's the beauty of it.
Humanizes him.
It humanizes him so much. Alexis is the same way, very vapid and only cares about what's on Instagram and putting out the proper image. And you look at these people and you think, am I going to be able to handle this for a show? Like, is this just what they're doing with these characters? No, these are the characters.
And if you don't stick with it, though, you never get to see all that change, because they do. And I think Alexis's character arc is one of the greatest character arcs of any show I've ever watched. She is just the best character, and from where she started to where she ends is just like brilliant.
I compare it a little bit to Rachel on Friends. She comes in and everything is all about the material goods.
Take Pete's job here.
Yes, I am.
That's it. I'm out of here.
But by the end of it, she is a becoming a professional woman. She's going off to start her own PR firm, and she's really become a whole individual, unto herself. And then the other thing for me, this is just a personal note. I am not a big Chris Elliott fan, and his relationship with Johnny, I mean, it's just sandpaper, like nails on a chalkboard between those two, and it's all about.
That's what's funny about it, though.
Right.
It's
all that unbelievably uncomfortable moments between those two. And if you're not a person who enjoys that, I could see how people might have not stuck with it in the beginning.
I agree with you on that, because if you watch the whole series, you remember it as far as how things changed, and you don't get that right off the bat. So
when I was doing my prep for this, I started in the first season. I thought, well, I'll start in the first season, start watching, and then I had to shut it off and go do the final. Actually, I did the final 3 episodes, because otherwise I just would have watched it.
I did too, because when I watched them, I kind of felt like I was missing something. So after I watched the last 2, I went back then and watched the third to the last one too, and it made a little more sense to me how I forgot things.
Right. And one of the great things about this show is to see how the Roses, the rich family who ends up in Schitt's Creek, how they soften to the people of the town, how the people of the town really bring them in and accept them and want to see them do well. That it's so heartwarming to watch the show. And
I don't remember every episode, and we're not talking about this one, but there's that one great episode where they go out for dinner with, Chris Elliott. What are their names? I forget their names.
There's Jocelyn.
Jocelyn
and they meet these 2 other rich people from their past there who are like passing through and just ripping on the town.
They call it Shittsville.
And they kind of laugh at first, and but again, you can see him grow, and Eugene Levy just over time gets so pissed off, and at the end he's like defending Chris Elliott, who is his polar opposite, and he shuts down these 2 rich people, and that's like really kind of like the turning point of the whole series as far as that goes, and that's one that really stands out, because that was really, really well done.
Yes, I completely agree. So I watched the last 3 episodes, and the reason I did that was that third to last episode was a great one where they go to sell the idea to investors.
That's where they go to New York, right?
Right, and that's with Stevie and Roland and Johnny. But it really kind of showed how quickly this series turned from we're in Schitt's Creek, this is where we're at. Yeah, we're kind of working on getting out, always looking to the future. But these last 3 episodes just kicked it into high gear to where it's like, if the deal goes through, they're going to leave. And 2 episodes, the deal goes through the third to last episode, and they're gone within 2 episodes. And that's how the series ends up closing. So, Pete, if you want to take her away.
So we started off with season 6, episode 13, which is the second to last episode. It's called Start Spreading the News. The episode begins, we start at the Rosebud Hotel, and they are celebrating by having mimosas. And they are calling everybody into the room, and they're having breakfast. And David comes in, and this is a perfectly exemplifies David. They're making this big announcement, having this celebration, and then he's just looking around like, "Where's breakfast?"
Right.
And that's all he's interested in. He doesn't care about anything else.
This is why I had to go back and watch the previous episode, because when they were celebrating and talking about leaving, I could not remember like what led to this. And so if you watch the one before it, it all comes together really well. So at first when we were watching this one, I was a little confused.
Right.
The thing that jumps out at you when you watch this episode, or really any of these episodes, is the David's wardrobe. In this
Moira's
whole episode,
wardrobe.
And Moira's, yes, of course, but David's, he's wearing this shirt that it's very artsy, right? And it's got this big hand on it. And that was just like, he always had these quirky kind of outfits that he wore. It just kind of made you laugh. Like, he never really commented on them, and nobody ever really did. But it was just like another thing. It's always there. It's standing right out at you. It's just kind of making you laugh. It's like, just defines him perfectly.
Well, and just for those who haven't seen the show, one of the very few things these people were allowed to take with them from their house was their clothes. And
including Moira's wigs.
Yes, Moira's wigs and all of her unbelievable clothes, and David's clothes, and Alexis has always got something, flashy on. She's always got to wear heels and, always, dressed to the nines. And then there's Johnny, who just always has a suit on. Like, he's businessman all the time. But the other three, their wardrobes are all just unbelievable to see, and just what they're gonna come up with next was a lot of fun. It was a huge fun part of the show.
What kind of stands out in this episode, as Brad said, that Johnny he's really got a heart, and so he's standing up for the town, and he's also stands out here how very supportive he is of his family. He was always supportive of his son, who was gay, and supportive of Moira, who's getting, she's got high hopes of when they're going to go to New York. He goes, "I've got no doubt Broadway will be calling, or maybe a pledge drive on PBS." It's just like, and the way that he acts it out, and the way that he says it, it's just so perfect, and it's funny. And then they're trying to make a big deal out of it, and then he takes a selfie of the family, and he goes, "Oh yeah, now that's a framer." and then Alexis is just like, "You just deleted it."
Dan. Yeah, he immediately deletes it, and he's like, "What?" Yeah.
So I mean, it's like, there's so many things about the family. Like, if you had never seen the show before, that you would just pick up on just right away. That's in the intro, right before the actual introduction, right? So that's the opener. They are all happy to be leaving town, but you can start to tell, and you kind of always get this impression, this town really means something to them. It's not like that they're just like wanting to hightail it out of there as quickly as they could, like they would have wanted to earlier on in the series. This town really grew on them, and as a part of the storyline here is that Patrick and David never really talked about their plans for after they're going to get married. And so Patrick assumed that they were just going to be living in Schitt's Creek for the rest of their lives. But David wanted to go to New York with the family. And so what Patrick had done was that he had put an offer in on a house that David had once said that he liked very much. And so he just sort of took it the wrong way and thought that he meant that that's where he wanted to live. But David was just kind of commenting on the house, not thinking that he wanted to live there. And so that's one of the big plot lines of the story. So,
well, and David and Patrick also have a shop that they run in Schitt's Creek. So they have, their business to tie them. Right. Yes. They have their business to tie them there. Patrick's family lives close, correct?
Well, that was another thing too that was kind of confusing, is so what were they going to do with that business? And
they'd open a shop
David's
in New York.
plan?
He'd open a shop in New York.
You can just do that.
They never really
Schitt's Creek to New York, and you got enough money to I don't know.
They'd figure it out. Well, they got they're going to have the money rolling in now from the deal with the motel deal, so they'd be able to help him out and get him up and running. And I think that's kind of what his thought was there. But yeah, so you're looking at David wants to go to New York with the family. Alexis has an offer to start her own PR firm in New York, so she's already looking for apartments, and she's going to live, offered to live with David and Patrick in New York. So that's kind of where everybody's looking at their next step out of Schitt's Creek.
Stevie sort of spills the beans accidentally that they put the offer in that Patrick had put the offer in on his house, and so that's how David found out. And so it was a really good scene, and we talk about how they go through the same thing that any other couple does, is that he found out from somebody else, and so then he had to go confront him on it, and that was kind of an emotional scene when they had to talk through what they were going to do and what they both wanted.
I wrote that there was a lot of crying in this episode there.
There was a lot of crying in this episode. And well, later on, there's a really great scene between David and Stevie as well, where there was more crying, but we'll get to that. The other sort of subplot in this episode is Twyla, who is played by, I didn't write her first name, but she's also Eugene Levy's daughter.
Sarah
Levy. And so she was not part of the family in the show, but she played more of kind of a plain local waitress, I guess you could say, at this cafe that she just loved working at.
Who is firmly a townie. Like, she is everything about this town right there.
Yep.
Right. It is revealed in a scene between Twyla and Alexis.
Yep.
And Alexis is, because they're leaving town, Alexis really loves her, and she's offering to give her a whole bunch of her wardrobe, right? And then they start having this kind of heart-to-heart conversation, and Twyla reveals that she actually had won the lottery a few years back. It was originally 92 million, but she had to split it, so it would have been 46 million, or just a lot of money is how they put it, because she couldn't do the math. But it was just the exact opposite when you think about it, of the entire storyline of Schitt's Creek. Twyla was the opposite in that she had all this money, and she just loved the town so much she didn't want it to change her life at all. Where losing all the money, that turned their lives upside down completely. Where she had all this money and didn't change her life a single bit. And then they had this really great conversation about just doing what makes you happy. It's not about having all the material possessions and the wardrobe and she could have done anything that she wanted, but that's just what would put a smile on her face, is just serving people in this town. And so that was a really great scene. And so then she's a little bit jealous because she wanted some of her clothes back. Alexis wanted some of her clothes back then after finding this out. But then there was another good scene later where Twyla was offering to help her out, and she's just like, nope, I can't take it. But then it turns out that she said, yep, I'm going to do what puts a smile on my face. And she winds up buying the cafe entirely. So that's something that that's her prized possession, and it means something to the entire town, and it can keep the business going, and it's where everybody just comes to socialize. And so that was exactly what she wanted. So that was a really good scene there.
Yep.
Anything you guys have to add on that storyline?
No, I think you got it. Yeah, I think you got it really good. I found it a little interesting that Twyla didn't already own the cafe. I figured that would have been one of the first things she did when
I would say, actually, that wouldn't have been a big deal to buy that.
Right.
I think it just never crossed her mind to buy it, because I don't think that she, I think that she just never thought that she could change her life. She just wanted to have she had all the money, but never wanted to do a single thing with it. And it was that conversation that kind of said, you know what, I can do something that makes me happy, and I can with this money. And that was what she did.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we also come to find out that Moira is going to be back on her soap opera, Sunrise Bay.
Bay.
So
Yes.
this changes the plans for Johnny and Moira going from moving to New York to moving to California. So by the end of the episode, we have Alexis, this family who's lived in Schitt's Creek now for 3 years, been together the entire time. Now we've got them spreading out from basically coast to coast, New York to California, and then David staying in Schitt's Creek with Patrick. One of the funny lines that I wrote down in this episode, and to me it goes back to David's perpetual just not being happy with anything. The last night in the motel, or the evening that episode ends, Johnny goes and gets a pizza for the family, and he calls them into the room. Hey, let's have dinner together. And David walks in and he goes, "One pizza? What is this, Les Mis?" Like, he's so disgusted at everything all the time. And you can read everything that's going on with him just by his facial expressions.
His facial expressions. He is such a good,
so
him
good.
and his dad both. He totally got it from his dad.
Right. Well, and he's always giving just the little looks to everybody, and just the amazement or the disgust or the just anything is just spread across his face so beautifully. I just love his character.
So then we have the scene that really perfectly encapsulated the relationship between David and Sarah, or actually no, not Sarah. I think I had Sarah written down. It's Stevie, right?
Stevie.
Where a little later they're sitting outside the house, and they're having this great conversation, and this is where he gets really emotional. It's like, how could he have done this without talking to me? David gets really emotional about what Patrick had done, buying this house without even talking to him, and he wasn't going to tell him until after the wedding day because he didn't want him panicking about anything. He knew exactly how he would react, and he was right. But then Stevie helped him realize that only a good person would do something like this for the one that he loves, right? So then that really made him tear up, and it was a really emotional scene, and really kind of landed the relationship that David and Stevie had established over the course of the entire series. It did become sort of a brother-sister relationship between those two, and they were relying on each other for support multiple times. And this one really landed that point home.
Well, and Stevie asks him, "Why do you want to move back to New York so bad?" And he's like, "Well, I have some friends there. I want to show them that I've won." And she said, "These are the same friends who aren't coming to your wedding because there was a electronic music festival in Norway." She's pointing out that, his real friend is here, sitting right next to him on the hood of this car talking. And I think the combination of Patrick doing something wonderful, and I love the line where Stevie goes, "Well, this is what a nice person does," and it explains why neither of us can understand it, because they're not nice people. David and Stevie, that's not the way they tend to think. Right. But then she also drives home the point that, I'm your friend. You can't leave me here by myself. And so, because Stevie is going to stay, she's going to stay in Schitt's Creek. She's also going to travel around to all these motels that they're going to buy and help get them set up. But she is going to be stationed in Schitt's Creek, and that's where she's going to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then we go back to the motel, and the family is all talking about their plans and everything, and they find out that the parents are going to leave on September 3rd.
Which happens to be David's
here it
wedding.
Is perfect. That's my wedding day, and they'd clearly totally forgotten. Right. So that was their whole plan. They're going to leave on September 3rd.
Well, and Moira still doesn't even really care. She thinks they can just make it all work out and leave that night or something.
Oh my
Right,
God. And
right.
she makes some comment about, well, I guess we can change the flights, but the lay down seats were only available for the third on the
Right.
flight. I mean, oh yeah, they always bring you right. They have all these beautiful, heartwarming moments, and then they snap right back into it with just
Yes.
they're so self-involved on so many accounts, which is the beauty of the show.
And then the episode closes with David actually having put in an offer on the house. So I didn't get how that worked, because Patrick didn't actually buy the house, or he said he was going to, or he talked to the family and they didn't.
Yes. He asked them
talked to the owners, but not an official offer.
Right. He basically just talked to the owner, said, if you're ever going to sell, please give me a call.
If you're going to sell.
And he didn't actually I don't think he put an offer in. He just, he found out the owners of the house were going to sell. So he was excited to buy it.
And then David goes and puts an offer in on the house, but he had no idea what he was doing. So
yeah,
he goes, yeah, you might want to call the guy.
You might want to take a look at those numbers.
So that's where that episode it concludes with a happy ending, which is a segue into the next episode. Do you guys have anything more to add about the previous episode before we go into the next one?
No, I think we got her.
Okay. I do not. You said everything. I didn't do a very good job of taking notes. I don't have as many lines written down.
It's fine.
So.
I'm
just saying I don't have it. You're
get on the bus. I'm driving this bus.
Yeah.
Well, and I watched this yesterday, so as Pete brings up stuff, it's like, oh yeah, okay, now I remember that scene, and
Well, and I watched these a while ago, so it's not as fresh in my mind. So I should have taken better notes, but you guys are doing great.
Yeah. Pete's doing a great job.
Now we go into the series finale, season 6, episode 14, titled appropriately "Happy Endings," and that has kind of a double entendre in this episode, because first of all, of course, we're talking about the finale, and it does have a happy ending, but there is a massage that includes a happy ending in the episode, and that's a very key moment that goes on, and it's a pretty hilarious moment. This is where I've kind of talked about the series as having everything that you would possibly want in a show. The finale also had everything that you could possibly expect out of a finale. It was hilarious. It made you laugh. It was very emotional. There were parts where you wanted to cry. And it just wrapped up the entire show beautifully. So that's why, to me, I think this is one of the best series finales probably that I've ever seen. And so it was just perfectly done. It starts out.
They do a good job of bringing back, like, all the characters have like some kind of significant moment in this episode.
Yes,
too. Yeah, even the little side ones still have a moment, and that's what I think makes it so well done.
Right. Now we all know how David can panic easily, and especially he's very worried about his wedding day. He had been panicking and freaking out all leading up to this wedding, and of course, the show begins with David being rudely awakened to find out that his whole wedding day is ruined because it's raining outside.
It looked like my wedding day.
Mine too.
Well, that's right.
Yep.
Not mine. My day was perfect.
Yeah, it was perfect. I remember yours.
And then here's where the family is just trying to be so supportive and so happy and everything, and then it just thunders again, and then he just drops the F-bomb about 10 times, just yelling it, and then they all just decide to leave.
Right, because he's doing one of his freakouts.
He is freaking out. And so then we go to Patrick, and he's perfect for David because he is always even-keeled, very calm. That's why they're perfect for each other. And so he's like, the only thing that matters is that he's marrying David, and that's all he cares about. Everything else will just work itself out. And so he's trying to be very supportive of him. He knew that David was going to be freaking out on his wedding day, so he planned in advance. He booked a massage for him for the morning of the wedding to calm him down, which worked perfectly.
Yes.
So we show David is getting his massage, and then all of a sudden there's something sudden that happens, and he looks down, and then we cut away, and we find out that the masseuse had given him a happy ending.
Right.
which this was a good freak out scene here too, where they're starting to fight a little bit.
Hey, can you describe a happy ending?
Well, our listeners, I guarantee you, our listeners know what a happy ending is in a massage parlor.
Another term for it is a rub and tug.
There you go. Okay.
Well, and to set this up, Patrick made it very clear to David to let the masseuse do his job. And that's basically all he was saying. But he made it very clear, like, you need to just enjoy this massage, take this time, and let this masseuse do his thing. And of course, we come to find out that, as Patrick put it, I just left him a big envelope of money and said, attend to all his needs or something. So on both ends, Patrick did really kind of set this up for it to happen, and David was more than happy to have it to have it go down that road, because he was completely docile and chilled out when Patrick comes back to the department. Right.
Yeah. So, and then when they're having this little argument, Stevie is there. And so she's like she's like freaking out, doesn't want a big argument or whatever. And so she's just trying to keep the calm. And then she brings up the point. She goes, well, David, you could have stopped it at any time. Or I started laughing. His response is, okay, Marcia Clark, court's adjourned for the day.
Marcia Clark.
I just lost it.
Right.
While this is all going on, the rest of the town is trying to figure out, while he's at his massage, because Patrick is actually there helping out, and they're trying to plan what this wedding is going to look like and how they're going to do this with it raining. Where are people going to park? What are they going to do for flowers? All of that kind of stuff. And the whole town just came together. Everybody put their skills to the best use. And eventually they made it happen. And so it was
one of my favorite lines that I do remember was from this part here, because like you said, they're all chipping in. And so Ronnie, who is this kind of hard woman who's in the Jazzy Gals, and she's trying to help out. I remember what her thing was that she came up with. But there was an awesome callback here, because Patrick is like thanking her for something she did, and she just gives him this dirty look and says, "I'm doing it for David." Which calls back like 2 years before, when they were setting up their store and she wasn't working quite as fast as he wanted, and Patrick had to like confront her, and that did not go over well. And so she's like hated Patrick ever since then, apparently, and is still hanging on to it. And I thought that was really funny. I didn't do it for you. I did it for David.
So anyway, they do make it all come together, and then we did cut away to the scene that we've already discussed, where they're having this discussion about the happy ending. But then eventually they all just forgive each other about that. It was just kind of this funny thing, and then we cut away to Alexis, and she's with her mom back at the motel, and she's starting to get really emotional about the wedding. And so this is kind of where you see she loves her brother, and she's kind of tearing up about his wedding. The mom just doesn't care.
Right.
Moira just doesn't.
Because Moira is now the officiant for the wedding, because the officiant couldn't make it from Elmdale because the weather was so bad. So now she has to officiate this wedding. So she's working on her speech.
Yes.
And we come to find out that she was the officiant in Pat Sajak's second wedding, was it?
I don't remember.
Yes.
And the line comes out where she said the line, "I'd like to buy a vow." And she goes, "Oh, the crowd just went nuts over that one." So she feels all high and mighty, because, she can obviously officiate her son's wedding, because she's, done this before for, much more important people.
Yeah.
But so her Alexis loves him. But is this before she shows up in this white dress, though, that looks exactly like a wedding dress, and just doesn't understand how insulting that is to him?
She goes and puts on her. This is the perfect David freakout scene. Actually,
Yes.
even more so than earlier when it was raining, because he comes back to their motel, and Alexis comes out wearing a white dress, and that's just her dress for the day. She didn't think anything of it. It's a white dress on a wedding day.
Except
And
it
then
did,
he's like,
it did come with this headdress tour
a
thing,
headdress.
which is obviously the veil of a wedding dress. So yeah, she is in fact wearing a white wedding dress to her brother's wedding.
So that whole scene where he's just having his another panic attack about that just had me in tears. And then Stevie shows up again, and she's the supportive one, kind of in that situation, or she tries to be anyway. But then we do get to the wedding, and it's in this town hall, which David didn't have in his dreams at all. But it turned out that they were able to fix it up. Had the flowers, had the music. It was beautiful music done by the choir. What was that group's name, Brad?
Jazzy Gals.
The
The Jazzy Gals. Yes,
Mhm.
and
Borgov.
just beautiful music, and and then they're walking down the aisle. It's David and his sister. And
I
it
will
does. It
say,
looks
I'm
Oh
like
wait,
sorry.
before David and
Since
the
you
sister
brought up-
come in,
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Since you brought up the Jazzy Gals, I just have to say, I love this episode too. It was great, and especially watching it the first time. But now this is like the third time I saw it. They sound too good. It's like so like
yeah, it's
produced and fake. It's
overproduced.
Yeah, but
and I want it to sound real. You're in this little room with these people, and it's just I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way about how perfect it sounded, because it's not reality, and the show is not like that usually. So
Right. So
minor quibble.
so before David and Alexis walk down the aisle, Moira has her big
Yes.
entrance. So she comes in. They have two gentlemen that open like a curtain for the wedding party to come down, and you see they open the curtain, and Moira is wearing an outfit, a hat that makes her look like the priest from Spaceballs.
Oh, I thought, yeah.
I was
had
thinking the
written down that she
Princess
looked like the
Bride.
Pope.
Oh, Princess Bride. Sorry, Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant. Yeah, I mean it's just
Like this
unbelievable, like a big Pope hat.
Pope's hat.
Yeah. Which again goes right into her whole wardrobe. Of course, she's gonna knock it out of the park for her son's wedding.
Totally over the top for everything. That's what's funny about her character.
Yes.
And
This is the last thing I'll say negative. Did anybody? So again, I think it's because dropping in on these last two episodes was different than watching it all the way through this time. Did anybody else get a little bit like just annoyed by Moira or any of the characters at this point?
no, I thought she made me
I don't know.
laugh because
she
it was
just
so...
kind of watching this episode. It's just kind of, I don't know. But again, when you watch the whole series and you see the changes, and I think maybe that helped, because I never really felt that way. As annoying as you would think she could come across, the way she talks and everything, I never really felt that way watching it the other two times. But I don't know, just watching it this time, it kind of felt like I just got a little bit annoyed, which I didn't feel before. So I was just curious if.
Well,
See, I just laughed because that was the whole point of her character.
right.
I know,
I mean,
and it
that's
is
what she's
but
going for.
Well, and
I
it's
guess
not
when you
just
don't
her.
have time to let it build, I guess it seems too forced to me. But that's not
Sure.
really the way it was.
Well, and it's not just her accent; it's the way her vocabulary is so strange as well. And
Well, and that's what I love, the way the interesting word usements she structures.
right.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yes,
I do love that, because there are so many lines that are like you couldn't even begin to remember what she just said, but God,
It
it was
makes
funny,
sense.
and it
Everything-
makes sense. Yeah,
Everything she says is proper.
you could learn a lot of vocabulary from her.
Right. Yes. So then we get to David and Alexis, because Alexis is walking him down the aisle, and that was one of David's big problems with her dress was they will look like the wedding couple coming down the aisle, because she'll be in the wedding dress and he'll be in a tux. And again,
Well,
his
earlier,
tux.
hold on. Earlier, the line was, "Do you think that we'll look like a wedding couple, or the wedding couple, and then somebody said, "Only if you're standing next to each other."
Yeah, right.
But then it's like, oh, she's walking me down the aisle.
Right. Well, and of course, David has an interesting choice as well for his attire because he's got a tux on top, and is the bottom like?
Well,
it's a kilt.
That's what he
wore
wears
kilts.
into the whole
kilt?
series. It looks like kind of a skirt, but it's like pants and like it's.
Was this pants? I think this
Almost
might
like
have
a
been
kilt?
just a kilt. Yeah,
I would
Yeah.
say it's a kilt.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
That
think
he
was
always
wearing-
wears.
But he wears something like that a lot of the time.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. It's not like a Scottish kilt. It's just like different styles of it,
It's a
but
David
it's always
kilt.
a kilt. It's a David
Well,
kilt, yes.
And then the boys, the men, exchange their vows, and David sings during his, which is kind of a thing that he does.
You mean Patrick?
I'm sorry, Patrick.
Well, and that's a nice touch because he's
Mhm.
singing Mariah Carey to him, which is David's favorite
Right.
artist, and so it's really sweet.
Yep. And David's vows are very touching. He talks about how he's never felt safer, he's never felt more accepted, and then of course his end to his vows is "You will be my happy ending," which is a
You are
nice
my
little
happy
tie-in to what happened earlier in the day. And he gives a wry little smile as he says it, and
That's good humor there.
right, yes, the callback, always good.
So the wedding was perfect and it was beautiful. And then we cut away to the next morning.
Mhm.
They're all saying their goodbyes and they're standing outside the motel, and they drive away. And then you see Eugene Levy's character asking the driver to stop the car. And this is kind of a touching moment too, just because he wants to look out the window and get one last look at the motel, because he took so much away from it. It was shit when they moved in, and they hated it, but it really grew on them throughout the series, and it became to be a place that they loved. And the motel, the people, everything like that. Perfect ending.
Where they stopped was at the edge of town to look at the Schitt's Creek sign, which was a bone of contention in the third episode of the series, because it looks like a man.
Yes. But this was Roland's gift to him.
Right. Yep. And then they switched the sign around.
They put all their own faces on it.
Yeah. And it had it as Moira standing behind Johnny this time with the kids in the creek. But it was a very nice way to end it. That was Roland's big gift to them. And that's another great thing about this show. I mean, right off the bat, it's Schitt's Creek, and the mayor of the town's first name is Roland. So his name is Roland Schitt.
Yeah.
It's perfect. So
anything more to add about the show, the episodes, the series?
Well, the series itself was nominated many times for Emmys.
Oh, well, I remember the was it the Emmys or the Gold? One of the award shows after that year. I mean, it just every single award for like an hour straight. They just kept going up to the podium. They won everything.
They won 9 in 2020 at the 2020 Emmys. They won 9. They'd been nominated for years, and I kind of wonder if, I mean, you would hope that the Emmys would award based on merit and not on popularity, but this was,
I think it's always
final
on
season, and I mean they won everything. And I think there was just this huge, because I think we're pretty common people, much like everybody else. People got into this show in 2019 and 2020.
Well, that's the thing. It was around for years, but it was on this little rinky-dink network that nobody even knew.
Right.
And it just, so they didn't win any awards yet, maybe, but it just took a whole new life when it went on Netflix, because now everybody had access, and then everybody discovered it, and then everybody had time to watch it. And so, I mean, it was just a fitting way when they won all those awards. It was just pretty much fate. It was going to happen.
Right. Well, and that was another big thing with this show is they chose to end it. Which I think is, you you hate when they do that because you want more. The show is so good. But for a show to be able to end on its own terms, to say this is when we're gonna stop, that's when you end up with a quality show. Like Breaking Bad only went, 5 seasons or whatever. I mean,
well, again, like I said at the
burn out.
beginning of the episode, that's how things have changed, and you have fewer episodes, and you can really kind of plan things out, and that's why shows can end better now.
Mhm.
Because if you're not on a network series where you got to make 22 a year or whatever, I mean,
and you're competing against time slots.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to do, and it shows they can do that. Like Seinfeld, it's pretty amazing how that they can do that, because it's much different.
Right.
That is correct.
So our top 5 list for tonight is supposed to be top 5 in music 2020, but I don't know. I went back to the list and I was like, geez, yeah, I wasn't a super huge BTS fan, but I got nothing because I didn't listen. I can't say that I really listened to a lot of I listened to a lot of music, but not like 2020 music, right?
There wasn't it was like with movies though. There wasn't a lot that came out. A lot of bands had stuff that got delayed or pushed back, and so I have a list, but it's
I would love to go
it's
first.
a short list, and it's not going to be a lot of things a lot of people. I guess a few are pretty big names, but
sure. Well, I'll go first because my list has one thing in it. I did not listen to it in 2020. I listened to it in 2022, and it was for this podcast. And that is Folklore by Taylor Swift. It's the only music that from that year that would be new.
So you guys went through, you couldn't even find like a song that came out, or because usually you name songs.
Not really.
That is crazy.
Not really. Like I said off air before we started recording, I was looking for that Foo Fighters album, which I loved, but it didn't come. It was supposed to come out in 2020, and it came out in February of 2021, delayed because of the pandemic. So anyway,
all right. Well, I have a list. Do you want me to say it?
Sure.
Yes, please.
I'm
looking forward to it.
The only honorable mention I have is one that came out in 2019, but it was on the charts for all of 2020. It was huge. And that's Harry Styles' Fine Line album, because our family is a huge, all 4 of us, huge fan. And I actually, that guy's really awesome. He's got many great songs. So I didn't include it in the top 5 because it wasn't technically from this year. At number 5, this is one, Pete, that you would like if you listen to it. So one of your favorite bands, Semisonic, came back that year and put out a 5-song EP. So it's not a full album, but it was full of good songs. And you love Semisonic, and we love Dan Wilson, and so that was a good one.
There's my 5 songs right there.
Check it out.
Just count it. Check it out. There's my list.
At number 4, the Chicks. Formerly the Dixie Chicks. They came out with an album, Gaslighter, which I liked a lot. And again, I was trying to listen to things because there weren't a lot of options. And so that came out and I listened to it and it was really good. Number 3, I have a band I love, Group Love. I've mentioned them before, and they had an album that came out called Healer. It was not quite as big as some of their others and it had like one kind of small hit, but I liked it. So that's on there. At number 2, Green Day had an album, Father of All MFers, and this was, again, not a big album for them, but it was a really good album that I enjoyed. And how many songs do I like on my albums, Pete?
10.
10. This is a 10-song album. Not only is it 10 songs, it's literally 26 minutes long. That's how short the songs are. You put it on and you can listen to it, and it's just this burst of awesome Green Day, like kind of old school, but kind of not, kind of like a mixture of different things. Some people didn't like it. I think it's really good. It's not my favorite album, but it's really good. And then also Billy Joe Armstrong put out an album that year of covers by himself called No Fun Mondays. So I lumped those 2 together. And then Taylor Swift is my number 1 for Folklore and Evermore, because she had the double 2 albums come out in that year. And Folklore was definitely the album of the year for me.
Well done.
So I did come up with 5.
Good job.
Technically, I guess technically I named 8 in total. So
you're an overachiever.
We're happy for you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad that at least somebody could offer something.
That's what this show is about.
Does your
Sometimes we gotta
back
reach
hurt
to the
from
bottom of the
carrying
barrel.
episode? Yeah,
No, I don't mind carrying the music because I know that's my job.
there you go.
Did Preacher Row come out with an album in 2020?
They did not.
No,
But I want
They
to
should.
I want to give a quick peek at next week first. So we've got one more great pandemic show coming, and we're going to talk about Ted Lasso next week.
Talk about another feel-good show.
Good. Yes.
The
2 weeks
best
in a row.
feel-good show. So Pete has still not watched any of it. He's going to watch the first 2 episodes. If you get time, you need to watch the first 3 episodes if you can do it. So,
all right,
we're going to talk about the beginning of that series, and it's fantastic.
Yes,
so that's my choice.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, can't wait. Here's the Preacher Row.
There they are.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
All
See ya.
right. You, David.
Come on, Rob.
Come on, Rob.
No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my back. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do. And hide if you want to.